Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Advancing Your Business, Your People, and Your Legacy Conversation series. My name is Kendall Rawls. I'm the Director of Development with the Rawls Group, your host. A CFO is in a unique position within the business. They are privy to both sides of the organizational coin. They are generally close to the CEO, owner, understanding the owner's goals, concerns, and vision. As CFOs interact with management, they also have a beat on operational and talent nuances the CEO owner may not intimately know. Where CFOs have opportunities in succession, striking the right balance of advisory versus bias is a challenge many CFOs face. In this episode of CFOs and Their Role in Succession Planning series, our very own succession planner, Loyd Rawls, along with the experts at Crowe, Ed Reinhard, a partner, and Brian Brueggeman, a senior manager, discuss solutions to common challenges CFOs experience as the organization seeks to grow, build value, and transition through the next generation of owners and leaders. Let's go. Loyd, will you share challenges CFOs face in succession planning?
Certainly, Kendall. There are several landmines out there that CFOs could encounter. And I would say at the top of the list would be imposing personal feelings, personal ambitions in their advice and counsel to the business owner. I think the CFO has to be very careful there. And it's easily picked up. And other things also would be relative to those personal feelings would be biases. Be careful not to strongly express feelings about a family member or a manager. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't express your feelings, but you should do so in an objective manner, and you should do so in a relative manner. Try to keep out of this those terms that could become awkward. And that is I feel like, I believe, try to remain what you're asked to be, that is an objective observer, and try not to become vulnerable to what you may perceive as opportunities to advance yourself because of this preferred position you have with the business owner. You likely can be successful in the short term, but I assure you that over the long haul, there's a lot of people looking over your shoulder, and those short-term advancements will not do you any favors long term. If there is a call for you to advance to a higher role than a CFO, not to worry. The organization will reach out to you. You don't need to promote yourself. Also, if you have a lack of training, lack of knowledge, express it. Don't be reluctant. I'm sure that, Ed, you've run into this quite often. What are your comments? I mean, what would you suggest to a CFO who doesn't feel they're qualified to answer a question?
Well, I think everyone, first of all, needs to have that exact position that you said, and that is they're afraid to answer a question. And it's maybe because they don't know. And that's so critical in any business or in anything you do. If you don't know, say so. Don't just try to push through it the best you can. So they just need to seek out knowledge. And there's a bunch of different ways they can do that, which I think we're going to talk about later here today. But they just need to seek out knowledge. And there's a lot of sources out there. But don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Give me some time to get up to speed, things of that nature.
Loyd, I know whenever I have an accounting question, I call Ed and ask him. He always knows the answer. So you just need an Ed in your life, apparently.
Not like I used to. These things are getting a little crazy anymore.
Well, I'm in the same boat. I just call Dr. Merlot. He typically tells me to shut up and go somewhere else.
I think that's the job I want, Dr. Merlot. Looks pretty good from on this side.
Absolutely.
So Ed, what are challenges you have seen CFOs face during the succession planning process?
Well, there's a lot of them. Loyd did a really nice job commenting on some. And, whenever there's money involved, and typically this is big money, it makes it that much more complicated and people's long-term livelihood. Loyd commented on technical training. And, I think sometimes the challenge is them feeling comfortable being involved and them having the confidence to be involved. And maybe they were involved in a different situation at a previous employer and it didn't go well, so they want to stay out of the process. So those are big challenges. This whole technical side that Loyd referred to, and it's ever changing. We get a new president, there's new laws, or somebody else lobbies and there's a new law. So that's a big challenge. And my advice there is you don't have to be the expert, but you have to know enough to be able to identify a fact pattern to then communicate it to the experts. So I think that's a very big challenge, is knowing when to identify the fact pattern and then get the experts involved. Loyd also referred to these soft side issues, but these CFOs, they can provide big value in the process by sharing that and engaging. But it can be a big challenge for them on how to share personally. Another challenge that I see, and it's actually a frustration of mine, and I've run in many times, is the CFO isn't engaged or included in the process from start to finish. Okay. So oftentimes they're late to the party, and then there's a plan put in place, or it's far down the road. And then who has to implement funding all these trusts and moving monies around, and how do distribution checks get cut, and just that whole process. So a challenge to them is sometimes created because they're not included from the start. And I think that's very important, because they're going to have to do the ongoing maintenance. Another item that we see sometimes is that they don't know where to get involved or how to get involved and where they want to stick their nose in and where they don't. But, at the end of the day, in the long run, this is a very, very important process to the organization. So if they aren't involved and try to make this turn into a successful endeavor, it'll turn into a dysfunctional organization. And if I ask Loyd to answer that question, we may never stop recording on dysfunctional organizations from what I've heard. So I think that's very, very important in this process. The other challenge I think that some of them see is this whole, how do I get the training? And will the dealer support me financially, time off to get training? And they don't have to be an expert, but they got to understand the fact pattern. And then, my last comment in all of this is, and really I'm going to ask Loyd this question is, of this succession planning, how much is, let's say, technical items versus soft side versus, the other categories? If you could throw some percentages on there, I think that would be very, very valuable to share.
I'll give it a shot, Ed. Based on my experience, I would say only about 35 to 40% of the issues of succession planning are technical, and the balance are soft-sided. I've always shared with our clients, and I would recommend every CFO do the same, that if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you, and I'll be responsible for getting you the answer. In that regard, I would rather know where the experts are than try to be the expert in everything. So that 65% of soft issues, they cover the entire spectrum of management, leadership, teamwork, all those soft issues that are just critical to the continuation of success, notably family governance, notably family harmony. Without these issues, hey, Technical expertise will get you nowhere. So how does a CFO deal with those? Cautiously. I think you should do so expressing forthrightly that, hey, you're not a management expert. You're not a family therapist. However, if you have some opinions, you have some thoughts, and if somebody is interested in them, you'd be pleased to share them. But you don't want to impose those thoughts, and you don't want to drive those thoughts. You want to make yourself available. Again, be a reliance advisor. And that is that the business owner or the board of directors can rely upon you to be genuine, to be transparent, and to be truthful relative to where, hey, this is not something I'm an expert in, but I can tell you, I've been here before, and this is what we experienced, and this is what I can offer you as based on that, as far as guidance, as far as concern.
Well, and just one follow up there, Loyd, from my experience, we've had several projects together over the years, and that's really where the sweet spot and the Rawls Group excels, is on these soft side issues. There's a lot of estate planners out there, but they do not deal properly with these soft side issues. And that's 65% of this equation, and very important in this process.
Well, thank you, Ed. Dr. Merlot calls me a softie all the time, and I will take your compliment that we are drawn to the soft issues. We are confident that you and the attorneys and the other technical experts out there can bring the answers of basically what are the parameters to the pathway that we can walk within. And when we know the parameters of the technical parameters of the pathway, then it's about aligning and prioritizing these soft issues for the fulfillment of the goals of the family and the business.
Thanks. And Loyd, what has been the biggest challenges you've seen with CFOs in succession?
I think the biggest challenge is alignment with the CEO. I believe a lot of CFOs, especially the more experienced one who are in the, say, last 10 years of their career, they can really get hard in their ideas, hard in their feelings, and really dig in. And I think the CFO needs to remember that their role is to be a facilitator, to be an augmenter, to be a supplement, to be, where applicable, a coach, and where applicable, a mentor. And being aligned with the CEO from a core value standpoint, from a mission perspective, is critically important. Now, that doesn't mean that if a CFO disagrees with the direction the CEO has taken, that they should not express it. But they should understand that it's the CEO who's setting the direction, who's setting the agenda, and it's their role to offer comments about it. After the comments are expressed, fall in line like everybody else does.
Loyd, how do you get them to bridge the gap if there is a big divide between the CFO and CEO? Is there, I'm sure there's 1,000 different ways to do it, but what have you seen that's been successful, or what's been a failure? I'm just kind of curious about that, because obviously there are very vast differences between the two sometimes.
Yes, but not as much as you may think, because in most of the cases we work in, Brian, the CFO is working for the CEO because the owner and CEO are one and the same. Now, the more complex environments that we work in is that the owner is the chairman and he has delegated the CEO role. And so he has the CEO reporting to him. And of course, independently, he has the CFO reporting to him as well.
Yep.
Now, that becomes, unfortunately, sometimes a competitive environment. And our role is to help these two professionals that is the CEO and the CFO, to understand that they're competing. The byproduct of competition is a win and a loss, and the loser never forgets, and the loser typically gets even. And that's what creates stress in the executive suite. As opposed then to competition, we then encourage collaboration. Now, collaboration is not a natural behavior. Competition is a natural behavior. Hey, I want to be the one that's the most heard. I want to be the one that is the most impactful. I want to be respected the most. I want my ideas to be most applicable. That's natural behavior, but that is potential chaos, and it creates basically terrorism in the executive suite. So we promote collaboration. We teach collaboration. We show them how they can choose to collaborate, or choose to compete, or choose to compromise, which is lose-lose. And if there's lose-lose between the CEO and the CFO, then I guarantee you the business is losing too.
Yeah.
So Brian, it's a good question. It involves facilitation, and it involves both of the parties, that is the CEO and the CFO, coming to recognize that they are working on behalf of the family, and it's their responsibility to do the right thing at all times. Unfortunately, some of those are just really not resolvable. Somebody's got to go. And typically we're in a role where we're asked who has to go. That's a very, very difficult position. So I would just encourage all CFOs to seek collaboration. And even if you're dealing with a highly competitive CEO, and if it's somebody that just will not collaborate with you, then try to get a third party involved. Try to get somebody who can help you figure this mess out, and just do the right thing for the business. Do the right thing for your employer. Thanks, Brian.
And Brian, what can you add in addition to what's been shared so far?
Yeah, so a lot's been shared so far, but a CFO may not have the confidence that they can deal with the soft issues of family relationships. Obviously, this is a very reasonable concern, especially due to the fact that a lot of them have not been through this. Just because the CFO identifies the question does not mean that they need to produce the answer. You could have good intentions that turn ugly, and obviously that's the last thing that we want to happen. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That is what Loyd is here for. He lives this every day, so certainly do not be afraid to ask for help.
And Loyd, you've been in succession planning for more than 45 years. What war stories or other insight can you share?
Well, I wish we had a few days, and I could also encourage everyone to pick up on some of my writings, which share some of these stories. But I would guess the most notable issues among CFOs is the rivalry they could have with other key managers. Those key managers who are in power positions. It might be a CEO, or it might be a general sales manager, it might be a general service manager. These rivalries are destructive. Rivalry, to define a rivalry, is you're not hoping that you beat the other person. A rivalry is that you hoping the other person fails. Now, in and of itself, that's a destructive approach to any form of succession planning. So that's the biggest issue we've run into. And then another one, Kendall, is resentment of family members who do not meet the predisposed standards that the CFO has established in their own high and mighty attitude of knowledge, commitment, experience, and maturity that may be needed to be a successor. Advice to CFOs: do not take a career position of putting down the prince. You should be in a position to offer your objective opinion, but if you've got strong feelings and strong emotions about the, let's say, the anointed prince, you should keep those to yourself. Try to manage them as best you can. And then another issue that we see is incomplete information. They come to opinions about managers, or they come to opinions about family members, or they come to opinions about a technical situation and they don't have all the information. And business owners oftentimes withhold information from their CFOs. It's not in every case. I think the most effective CFO is one who has a very trusted, open, transparent relationship with the owner, and there's a very free exchange of information, but sometimes they're not. So be careful as a CFO. Don't get out there on a limb, because you might have incomplete information about an issue. I'd love to discuss in more detail some of these experiences, Kendall, but generally those are the things we've encountered.
Thanks, Loyd. And Ed, as it relates to challenges that CFOs face in succession, what is the one thing for the listener to walk away with?
It's hard to put it all in one, but I think my opinion, the most important thing would be that they've got to be a key member of the succession team, and they've got to live it and they've got to engage in it. And that's from start to finish, and maybe even to get that buy-in from the front end by the owner. Start may be involved in the selection of the counsel or the estate planner or whoever's going to be on the team. And then to finish is to the extent that the documents are signed or the restructuring's done, because they're going to be involved in the implementation and ongoing maintenance. And it's very common on a lot of these, there's ongoing maintenance. It's not once you're done, that type thing. It's constantly moving. So, their biggest challenge and the key and the walk away in my mind is they've got to engage in it, they got to own it, and they've got to be sure they're involved, from day one, because they're going to be responsible for a lot of the detailed implementation long term. And I just feel if they aren't involved, there's a lot of risk there of maybe not buying in, and could create some real additional challenges down the road. So that would be my last comment. Thanks, everyone. I think this wraps up this section, and have a great day.
Where one has great opportunity, there are challenges. CFOs are in the unique position of being in the middle, which requires finding a balance between personal bias and professional perspective. The next episode of this series focuses on how a CFO can enhance their succession planning knowledge. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Ed, Brian, or Loyd at the email addresses listed on the screen. Want more information on Crowe's CFO forums? Contact Brian Brueggeman. Continue listening to the series now or come back for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new.